It's me again. You guessed this is Lion King. Could not resist just this once. Yep. So Lion King. Oh, what have I got to say about the animated version? Well, a bunch of things though. I'm gonna basically sum it up. I will admit, first of all, I did not grow up with this movie, partly because, well, I was born a few months later after it came out, and also, well, how do you admit it? I wasn't allowed to watch it for a long time as a kid. I was not allowed to watch it until I was in high school, and even when I did sneak a few peeks at behind my parents' backs on the movie, I did not forget a single thing. I did not forget the plot. I did not forget Mufasa's death. I don't think you're allowed to, anyways. I did not forget the plot line and what had happened. Yeah, and then when I finally got to see it at a time I was allowed to, it was phenomenal. And I kept wondering, how did I forget a few of these things like the villain song and how good grief and awesome it is? How, I mean, and Circle of Life is phenomenal. It's one of the best openings you ever see in any movie ever. And the plot is cohesive, well told, and well written. It's one of the most well written movies ever out there. The characters, they range as they're supposed to. The main character, the big supporting character, you got the comic relief, you've got the love interest, you've got them all basically, and it is just that good, that amazing. And of course, the animation, you cannot contend with it. It is incredible. Don't you try arguing with me about it. You take one look at every frame from Circle of Life and you tell me that that animation is not amazing. Every bit of it looked like the artists were hard at work in every way, ranging from how the lions actually move. By the way, they did bring in a real life lion in order to look at it, study it, how it moved, how the shoulder bones moved. Yes, I'm pointing out that detail in a way to make it believable. Yeah, it's not realistic that they can clench their paws into fists or hold up one paw finger, I guess, but they still did it in a way that made you believe that these animals could, and on top of that, gave them expressions that you could identify with. So you knew when a character was afraid. You knew when a character was smiling. You knew when a character was conniving or sarcastic or just being genuine. And that's what I loved about The Lion King. I mean, it is not my all-time favorite movie. But I admire and respect it for everything that they have done for it. So when I heard that they were going to remake The Lion King, I thought, um, but then I heard that it was from the makers of The Jungle Book, the Jungle Book remake, which I actually think is one of the better remakes ever made out there. Why? Because it took chances, it tried new things by combining both the original book and the animated movie and became its own Jungle Book. It did not feel like it was rehashing everything, like I would know some remakes to do. But then again, that was a year before Disney started rehashing their movies. And so I had some hope about it, but at the same time, I knew early on what some of the conflicts were going to be. Like they were going to try and make it realistic, and that would mean no expression from the animals, which we'll get into later. And I mean, but at the same time, I was going to give it a chance because it's the guy who directed The Jungle Book, and so fingers crossed on it. And some parts were awful, some parts were great. So, since a lot of people like to hear the best part last, at least to make up for all the bad moments, let's get all the cons out of the way. First of all, I found an article. I did find an article from the director saying that this was not going to be a shot-for-shot remake. Either he did not know what a shot-for-shot remake was, or he was lying just to get some advertisement. Because this is clearly a shot-for-shot remake. Yeah, they make a few differences, like they expand a few centimeters on Scar's backstory, and maybe a few centimeters on on his relationship with the hyenas. Not really. But again, a few changes. A few centimeters of changes does not stop it from being a shot-for-shot remake. It's the exact same plot. It's the exact same story. There's no surprises anymore. You know what's coming. You know who's gonna die. You know who's going to be the comic relief. You know everything, especially if you've seen the animated movie. Okay, that part out of the way. What else is wrong with it? You shortened my favorite Lion King song, Be Prepared. Granted, it's not terribly done. I like the tone of it, I like the melody of it, and I did like the singer a little bit, but you let The Lion Sleeps Tonight go on longer. You let Hakuna Matata run the full time. You let Circle of Life run the full time. You let I Just Can't Wait to Be King run the full time. And Can You Feel the Love Tonight run the whole time. And you could not let Be Prepared go on the full length of time. I don't care if he's just talking to the hyenas as just a dictator. That's exactly what he did in the original movie. Yeah, he talked a bit, but he also sung too. And the song conveyed his plans and his emotions and how thrilled he was that he was going to finally be rid of his two biggest threats, Mufasa, his brother, and Simba, his nephew. And finally he was going to take the throne, and all the broken promises that were coming with it. And I even looked on Spotify to see if they expanded on that song. And much to my disappointment, they don't. It's still the same 2 minutes rather than, the 3 or 4 minutes that the original song was meant to be. Why did you shorten that? Not give us a longer rendition? Maybe it's in a deleted scene? Fingers crossed? But still, why did you shorten it and let the other songs go longer? I like the hero songs, but everybody loves the villain songs. Are you going to do that to poor unfortunate souls? Are you going to cut Hellfire short for the Hunchback of Notre Dame Hunchback of Notre Dame remake? Don't you dare! And I really hate to bring this one up, but as great as it is to hear James Earl Jones's voice reprising as Mufasa, is it just me, or does he really, really sound like that he's tired and lost his passion? Yeah, everybody is saying that he's getting older and that he's getting tireder, so I guess I could give him somewhat of a leeway on that, but at the same time, why didn't they replace some of his old clips, especially when he's confronting Scar going, "Is that a challenge?" Instead he's going, "Is that a challenge?" I really feel bad listening to that, and I feel sorry for him. And well, it really does sound like that he did it only on the first take. I mean, a few scenes he still sounds great in, but for the most part, at least in the first half, he really, really sounds tired. I guess I can't blame it. I can't entirely fault him for that, but it's still noticeable. Also, it's called the live action Disney movie. I mean, you cannot really call this live action if you're not going to really make anything live action. I think the Nostalgia Critic joked about it best when when they asked, "What's that live action about it?" and he says, "The ground." Pretty much that's about it. Everything else, I mean, the animals are pretty much all CGI, and I knew that that was going to happen. I mean, I do admire the director's art for the CGI animals, and I respect it. I mean, it worked well in the Jungle Book, but at the same time, they had a live action human in there. Maybe a couple of live action humans. I forget if the shadowed humans behind the red flower were human or not, but were CGI or not. But basically, yeah, they had an excuse to actually call themselves live action. This one, it feels like it's an animated, that it's animation trying to be live action. So, some parts of it kind of work, and other part, but for the most part, it really, really doesn't feel like it works. Also, I complained about Be Prepared being shortened. Here's my complaint about how the movie starts. You remember Circle of Life from the animated version and how overwhelming and amazing it was. It established everything. You knew what was going on. You knew these characters immediately. And how it starts off with the sunrise. I mean, how it's all black and then the sunrise comes out, revealing the landscape. In the live action movie, you see the landscape before you see the sunrise. That's not as powerful. I mean, the singer is still powerful, of course. I mean, I still get knocked away by knocked away or blown away by by the way he comes out with Nachimenya, like that. But yeah, to see the landscape before the sunrise is not as powerful as what they did with the animated version. Also, the choices are made way too fast. I mean, this is one of the problems I've seen with most remakes, most Disney remakes. You notice how in some of the animated movies, you see the characters actually giving thought to some of their choices, even if it's for a quick second, a glance down, looking sideways, anything. You see that they take at least a second or a couple seconds to actually think about their choices. With the live action movie, it's like, okay, we're gonna do it. The characters are making rash choices. Making choices on the dime, like they're scripted to. Yeah, they are scripted to, but you gotta make it feel natural. At least with the Jungle Book, there were moments in there where they made choices, and you could see that they thought about it. They didn't just, well, let's do it because the script says so. That's what I got out of Beauty and the Beast remake. That's what I got out of this. Also, some of the scenes take way too long. Like, there's the whole scene with Simba's hair going in the wind, and it takes forever. And the hula scene is sinfully left out. I mean, yeah, I know, they replaced it with Be Our Guest, but the hula scene was funnier and improvised and fun and original and possibly the most flawless comedic scene in the entire movie. I and I and also I Billy Eisner can be a good singer as Timon, but and while Seth Rogen does make a good Pumbaa, he's no singer. He's not a singer. I'm sorry. But it's just like laughably bad how much he's not a singer. I don't know if that was meant to be a joke or not, but the other Pumbaa actually was a singer. And finally, let's get to the big thing that is just wrong with the movie that doesn't really work. Yeah, it's live action. Yeah, well, based on live action. Yeah, it's supposed to try and look realistic. And that's why the animals don't really have big expressions or expressions at all. But that's actually a big problem for several reasons. I mean, I give it I give credit to the voice actors and how much they do put effort, as much as they can, into their roles. I mean, Scar needed to try harder. James Earl Jones is often a natural, but and everybody else does great, but it doesn't quite work as strong if the characters are not emphasizing their emotions. I let me I mean especially if they're allowed to move their jaws in to make human words and not just animal calls. I mean, but I've actually seen more emotion expressed in the real life pets in the Homeward Bound movies when they telepathically talk rather than just use their mouths. It wasn't the available technology at the time, but it still worked. Or, since we're talking about CGI, let's look at characters. Let's look at a couple movies as well, like Charlotte's Web and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Let's start with Charlotte's Web first. The characters were allowed to express themselves while also talking to form human words, and somehow it didn't look as awkward, especially on Wilbur. He was allowed to press his brows together. He was allowed to smile, to talk, and or since and so on. And since we are talking about lions, let's take a look at the 2005 Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe, and take a good look at their version of Aslan, the Great Lion. He was allowed to talk. He was allowed to have brows to express himself. He didn't have eyebrows like these, but his face could crunch together to show whether he was sad, happy. He could even smile, and his eyes could expand or close or look anywhere as he wanted, and it wouldn't look awkward. The CGI artists actually knew what they could do to make him a likable yet believable and less awkward character. When I'm looking at this movie, I really see the awkwardness of the characters, of the good voice acting coming out from their mouths, and yet they're not allowed to express their faces. And when you have something like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe from 2005 actually allowing the characters to express themselves with their face, then 2019, you really need to step it up a bit. But that's it with the bad stuff. What's good about it? And actually, I will have to admit this. Not only do I not have regrets about buying a ticket to see The Lion King, aside from, well, the song that my friend and I got to do in front of the cashier. That was so much fun. But also, despite being a shot-for-shot remake, it was actually nostalgic to see it on the big screen. Something I never got to do. I mean, I saw The Lion King being re-released in 3D, the animated version, but it was also kind of nice to see it on the big screen in live action. And as much as I've complained about the animals being too realistic and not being allowed to express themselves, they still look great. I think Simba looks cute as a cub. I think the animals, much like the Jungle Book, the animals are realistic looking, and much like the animated version, they do look like that they did study these animals, how they behave, how they walk, and so on. And this might be a small note, but actually, the hyenas are a lot more impressive. I mean, what they've done with the hyenas in here is very impressive. I don't know about you, but I've seen some documentaries about hyenas and how they behave, and just the fact that this movie made Shenzi a matriarch. For those of you who do not know what I'm talking about, hyenas have a female leader of their clan. She's the biggest of the group, and she is not to be trifled with, basically. And just the fact that they did that alone is just really good, because in the movie they were just a pack of hyenas. In the animated they were just a pack of hyenas who were just slobbering idiots, who were also funny. But at the same time, it kind of forgot how hyenas behave, and that they're not just slobbering, laughing scavengers. They're not scavengers. They're big-time hunters. And they've got the kind of jaws that will crunch down a bone and crush it. Arguably, possibly stronger jaws than a lion. And that's already impressive. So yeah, right off the bat, they made the hyenas a lot more realistic and a lot more scary. I actually remember looking at Shenzi and like, okay, oh my gosh, wow. And also, the voice actors really, really try. I still praise James Earl Jones for his performances and what he gave. And this is probably going to spark some hate or some debate, but I like Donald Glover as Simba a lot more than Matthew Broderick. Yes, I said it. Donald Glover as Simba is a lot better than Matthew Broderick. I will grant it that this was probably that this was Matthew Broderick's final good performance before he started becoming bored with all his roles, but yeah, he pretty much was the kind of voice that you could replace with anybody else and you wouldn't miss a thing. Donald Glover actually put more emotion into his character. When his character felt emotion, I felt the emotion. When his character got angry, I felt his anger. When the character when the character was trying to decide or even trying to look inside himself, despite that the animal couldn't, I could feel the voice actor doing that. So, right off the bat, that is a good sign. When even one of the voice actors has to outdo the original. Sorry, Matthew Bortrick. Or wait, not sorry. Still not forgiving you for your rendition of the Music Man. Please remind me to slap the director for that. Okay, and what else do I like? I thought Zazu was funny. I think it was a combination between the fact that the the lines were actually funny and the voice actor was funny up against the emotionless talking bird. It, the combination actually just cracked me up. I, if he had stronger expressions, I probably would have bellyached laugh. But up against an expressionless bird, it was kind of funny. And also, you can't deny that the music is still great. I mean, it is still beautiful. It's the same Hans Zimmer music and choir. I mean, sometimes different singers, and hey, they got Beyonce to sing a couple songs, and I think she's pretty good. I mean, even her voice acting is pretty good. I mean, a couple of my friends say that she's no actress. Maybe so. I've only seen one other movie with her, but I don't think she did that bad in The Lion King. So, kudos. And I will also say, as much as I've criticized Seth Rogen for his singing, if I had to pick somebody, I would have picked him for for Pumbaa. Hey, he makes a pretty good Pumbaa. And, well, speaking of which, that's another thing I like. I like how Billy Eisner and Seth Rogen as Timon and Pumbaa improvise in their own way. They don't just copycat the other two who played them originally. They actually make it their own. They make funny jokes together. Maybe they should be a stand-up comedic duel at some point. And also the visuals. Yes, I've said before how the animals don't look that great, or at least their faces don't go great with the very good voice acting, but like I said, the visuals on them is still great, and well, the landscapes are still great. This movie actually still tries to recapture the grand, the grand landscapes of of Africa. Whether the ominous elephant graveyard, which actually did give me shivers, maybe not as much as the animated version, but it still made me very nervous. And the stampede in the gorge was still massive, and and the landscapes where Simba lives with Timon and Pumbaa for a while is beautiful. And hey, even just the fact that it's not just Timon and Pumbaa living in this place, but that there's a variety of wildlife there. I know why the animated version had to leave it to just Timon and Pumbaa. I mean, it was easier doing that, and also you had to use your own imagination for it. And also, I love the longer rendition of The Lion Sleeps Tonight. It was very fun to listen to. I mean, and I found myself nodding my head to it and dancing along until there's a jump scare. Spoiler alert, there's a jump scare in there. So don't get too comfortable in the song for too long, especially if you're watching it in IMAX. And the end credits. My friend and I remember we stayed for the end credits thinking, much like the Marvel movies, they've got something at the very end. It was even in one of the articles that she saw, but apparently not. But while still listening to it, it was such a treat and a delight to listen to the music, to hear the African version of He Lives in You. And I mean that the song was sung in the African language. And I knew what the words were in English and sang part of it. And it was nice to hear it, not just from the sequel, but it was also from the Broadway show. So, kudos for that. But I have to give it 10 points for having Elton John sing one of the songs in the movie. And no, in the end credits. So, 10 points for bringing back Elton John. And one final note that I am going to give. Dang you, Disney. Dang it. You made me cry at Mufasa's death, even in live action. Dang you, Disney. How do you do it? I mean, it may not be as emotional as the animated version, but still, it's Mufasa. How do you do this? So, I've given all my good points and my bad points, and I'm not sure what else to say about it. I mean, if you hate the movie, I completely understand. If you love the movie, I also completely understand. I'm kind of in the in-between category. I find a lot of not so good things about it, and I find a lot of good things about it, sometimes even great. Just the fact that Simba did better than the original in this is a double thumbs up from me. But if you gotta twist my arm and ask me which movie is better, or which do I recommend the most, I'm gonna always point to the animated version. Always the animated version. Why? Because it's the first, because not only did it come first before this, but it was massive and impressive on its own. It was something to behold in theaters and even at home. Whereas this movie, the 2019 version is gonna be more impressive on screen rather than at home. At least that's my prediction. If it turns out to be impressive for you at home, that's great. Still disappointed that we didn't get that one scene. Not sure how else to end this. I mean, what do you want me to do? Dress and drag into the hula?